Greetings, folks. Iolair Ghorm here. I owe my regular viewers an apology for having an unannounced break in uploads for the last 3.5 weeks or so. There have been quite a few things happening in real life. I've been taking care of things at home. We had the death of a very beloved pet recently. I've also been reconfiguring the home server, which has a lot of the content I use to produce material for the channel, and there have been a variety of other things going on, and so I've had this, like I said, unannounced break. But I'm definitely glad to be back. And in addition to this replay, I have a number of others queued up, and they mostly have a heavy focus on the impact of the carrier rework on surface ships in World of Warships. So this match is myself in the Tier 4 Soviet destroyer, the Izyaslav. I am division with Jimijaz in the Tier 4 U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Clemson, and we are in a standard battle on fault line. There are 2 carriers per team, and this was played on 0.8.0 and again is under the new carrier rework. So for my ship, the upgrades aren't anything particularly special, but my skills, yes, embarrassingly, I do have a 19-point commander. This is a really terrific destroyer. It kind of introduces you to the playstyle of the Soviet gunboats as you move up the line. And on this particular ship, I don't really see a need for IFHE. These carry 130 millimeter rifles, and there are very few armor thicknesses that would benefit from taking IFHE at this tier, so I prefer to take an additional level 3 and level 1 skill. So this is in pretty sharp contrast to my build on higher tier Soviet destroyers. So this match is something where, again, I don't like to showcase seal clubbing, but this is a situation that was kind of like another replay I had on this channel a few months ago that kind of blurs the line between seal clubbing and carrying. And the opposing carriers are definitely going to keep us and our team very busy, and situational awareness will be really crucial in keeping us in this game. Since this is standard battle and there are no objectives to take, it really is kind of ideal conditions for a Soviet gunboat because the playstyle tends to be pretty selfish. Sort of sailing at max range, firing your guns all the time and just farming damage. We will need to go back and defend our cap later on in the battle, which I'll get to later. But otherwise, Jim and I are out here on the west flank to basically keep things spotted, keep the opposing team back, and defend this side. Now, Jim and I are the only destroyers on our team. We have no destroyer support on the east flank, and there will be an opposing Izyaslav that's going to move down the east side largely unopposed. He is going to get detected a few times as he approaches our cap, but he's going to end up being quite a serious threat to our cap and to the ships that are in and around our cap. And again, I'll get to that not too long. Now, you'll notice in the last 30 seconds or so, I came under aerial attack from some of the rocket planes, and I wanted to use this moment to talk a little bit about my views on carriers in general, as well as the new gameplay. So in general, I'm okay by and large with carriers in game. I think that they can add some healthful additional challenge and dynamic aspect to the game. I know my comments might be taken as somewhat heretical by some of the division mates I have, some of whom have very strong negative opinions of carriers in general. But I'm not too upset or I'm not vehemently against carriers in general. The problem that I see that Wargaming has, whether we go with the old carrier gameplay model or the new one, is that carriers will remain the most powerful class in the game. They have the fastest vessels, which are airplanes. They have the greatest reach, which is the entire map, and they have guided attacks. And those combinations, or that combination of factors, basically ensures that they are going to remain the most powerful class in the game. Wargaming obviously needs to make carriers effective enough that people will want to play them. They can't neuter them to the extent that, although some people have argued that they have been over-neutered, but they can't be nerfed to an extent that people won't want to play them. But if they have some means of being successful, in my opinion, carriers are going to remain the single most powerful class in the game. And I don't know that that's going to completely solve the number one issue that I saw with the old carrier gameplay mode, which wasn't the carriers themselves, but was the skill gap between carrier players. So if you had a team that had a very strong carrier player against a team that had a mediocre or a very weak player, the team with the very strong carrier player had a much better chance of winning, because the team with the stronger carrier, or the carrier player, had a lot of influence on how the game went in terms of keeping things spotted. He could dev strike things relatively easily and so forth. And I think Wargaming has made some important changes so that the carriers may not be as sort of devastating, potentially, at least get those like really big single strikes in. But some of the other aspects in terms of spotting ships and being able to wear down opponents and so on, they will continue to be the most powerful class in the game, in my opinion, going forward. And I don't know that the skill gap aspect that was the number one problem is going to be completely solved. It may be less prominent, but I don't think that the issue is going to completely go away. So I think Wargaming has a very significant challenge trying to balance things, and I don't envy their position as game designers and as software designers to try to figure that out. And I'm not sure where the happy medium is, if there is even one to be reached. And we'll just have to see how that works out. So Jim and I are having to fall back here because one is we just don't have enough support on the side. We do have this opposing Phoenix that's pushing down, and Jim and I are going to try to get him focused out because he is the lead ship on the opposing team on this flank. But you'll notice that in our cap, we have the Izyaslav that I mentioned earlier. In fact, he's already taken out one of our carriers, or he will take out one of the carriers here shortly. He will also take out an allied New York that's in our cap, and then he's going to take out the other carrier as well. And Jim and I are now going to start pushing back down to the southeast. In fact, the Izyaslav just sank one of our two carriers. And there I just finished off the Phoenix for my first kill. I'm up to 44,000 in damage, and that's a testament to the capabilities of the ship. We're 8 minutes into the battle, and I've already done 44,000. A lot of that is through fires. I have 8 fires set, but we're now having to push back towards our cap. We have a 2-ship deficit. We do have an allied ship in the opposing team's cap, a Svetlana, that kind of just, meandered in there, but he's going to get focused out, so he's not going to be able to contribute as much either to the game. We did just, well, at least briefly get within 1 ship deficit, but now we're back to a 2-ship deficit as we've just lost the Svetlana that I mentioned earlier. So the Izyaslav here that we can now see in the middle of the screen, he had taken out, like I said, one of our carriers. He took out an allied New York that was in our cap, and now he has just taken out our other carrier. So we're now operating with a 2-ship deficit. In fact, we just sank another ship, and this Izyaslav is very healthy. So I'm going to have to charge him down. Now, I have to be careful here because the Izyaslav, the torpedoes come up very quickly. I think it's like about 40 seconds. And by the time I reach him and detect him again, his torpedoes will be up. And now we've just lost 2 more ships. So now we have a 4-ship deficit. So it's Jim and me and 2 battleships against the rest of the opposing team. And I'm charging down this Izyaslav, and like I said, by the time I detect him, his torpedoes will be ready again. So I have to be careful about how I do this, but I don't really have a choice in not going to try to defend the destroyer. I'm going to send 2 sets of torpedoes here. Now, the one thing that's kind of nice is the Izyaslav has 3 sets of torpedoes. So I'm going to send 2 here. I'm going to hold 1 in reserve so that if neither of these strike, and I can try to get another torpedo salvo off when I'm basically point blank range and basically get an assured kill. He may end up taking me out in the process as well, but at least we'll get him down. Here I do get a torpedo on him, so I know where he is. Trying to detect if you see him, and now I've just spotted him. It's going to take a couple of salvos to put him down, but my concern here is that torpedoes are coming. Point blank range, again, torpedoes should be ready, but they never come. My suspicion is that he panicked when he took the torpedo, and he wasn't sure where I was coming from. Maybe he anticipated me coming from the direction that my torpedoes were traveling. I'm not sure, but either way, he didn't end up getting torpedoes off. So now we're down to a 3-ship deficit, but we have a huge point differential. And Jim and I realized at this point, really our only option to be able to try to win is to take their cap, which is in standard battle. And again, I'm repeating myself. I know that people who have watched my other videos know my views here on standard battle, is that taking the opposing team's cap is normally a last resort. Sometimes you'll see games that are very lopsided and one team dominates and can take the opposing team's cap with no difficulty. But usually in those cases, you know, the team that's winning will say, let's not cap them out, let's sink everybody. But in the situations where you're behind, like we are here, capping sometimes is the only option to be able to try to win. And that's what Jim and I are headed up north to try to do. We have 2 allied battleships that are on the east side, an Orion and an Ishizuchi. We are going to lose the Ishizuchi here in a moment, and then the Orion will become the primary focus of the opposing battleships that are on the east side, as well as the aircraft carriers. Jim is able to spot some of the opposing ships that are coming down the west side. Frankly, at this point, my biggest concern was the Izyaslav, because he's the fastest ship that is on the opposing team. There we just lost the Ishizuchi on the far east side. The Izyaslav is the fastest ship, so he either can come back and intercept me as I'm heading to his cap, or he might be headed to our cap. But the last time we saw him, he was on the one line, so we're not sure where he is. Now, I've decided here, instead of going directly into the cap, which would advertise my presence as being in the cap, I'm going to try to come up on the west side, because we saw that a number of the planes that were being sent by carriers were coming from that island or near the island that is on the west side of the opposing team's cap. And what I want to try to do is ambush one of the opposing carriers, because again, in addition to trying to cap, we also need to try to sink some of the opposing ships so that we have fewer opposing ships trying to come back and defend other caps. And here I do detect one of the 2 opposing aircraft carriers. So he's coming, actually, as luck would have it, he's coming toward me, which is going to make it easier for me to get hits on him and also come in for a torpedo send. So I actually decided at this point that I'm actually going to change my direction and move back toward their cap, because I want to intercept the Hosho as quickly as I can, sink him with torpedoes. I obviously can sink him with guns, but it's going to take me longer if I'm able to get a torpedo strike on him, and then get into their cap and start, taking points away from them, or at least preventing them from taking more points. I have enough health here that I don't feel threatened by the secondaries that are being fired by the Hosho. He has relatively few secondaries, and I have enough health that I can avoid that. My bigger concern is the attacks from the rocket ships that are being sent on me, and I've been able to avoid most of them. I've also held my torpedoes here until I can get basically an assured strike. And this is where I see quite a few players, when they come in for these ambush or situations, is that they kind of flub up their drops. They either send them at a very bad angle, or they send them on ships that are essentially sailing away from them. They basically don't set themselves up to get an assured strike. In fact, there I could have probably gotten a little bit closer before I sent, but I didn't want to run into the island, and I felt like I was close enough that I was going to get many of the torps on the carrier, which I was, and able to take him down. Now we've lost also our Orion, so it's just Jim and me, and we're both in the opposing team's cap. Again, we still haven't seen the opposing Izyaslav. We're not sure where he is. And that, again, was my biggest concern as far as surface ships that could come back and intercept us, because we can see that most of the opposing, or all of the opposing capital ships, are basically on the perimeter and aren't in striking distance of their cap to be able to defend it. And then the other threat, obviously, is the second of the two aircraft carriers. And he is scrambling rockets to come intercept us. Jim is very low health. If he takes even one rocket, he's going to be sunk. And this progress that we've made on the opposing team's cap will lose a lot of that. And so I'm scrambling down to Jim to drop smoke for him, so that he can get into that smoke. I don't remember if his smoke was going to expire right away, why he left it. But either way, the idea was to get us both into smoke. There's the rocket attack, which misses, and we do end up capping out the opposing team and end up winning the match. So a really nail-biter. Jim and I ended up having to take a break after this match just to cool off, because it was rather tense, especially there at the end. The Izyaslav is a terrific ship. If you like the gunboat style play, I certainly do recommend it for people if you haven't tried it out. I certainly enjoyed doing this game and this replay for you, and I'm glad to be back, and I hope to see you out there, and I certainly wish you happy sailing.